The Monday night primetime game against the Seahawks had a massive meaning for Lions fans as the black uniforms were unveiled for the first time in over a decade. But what was more important was the victory over the Seahawks and what it should mean to the rest of the NFL. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. My friends, I'm going to tell you this right now. That Monday night primetime game, I believe, is one of the best games that the Lions have had as not only a team, but as an organization, probably over the last 10 years. And that is because of all the stuff that went on in that game. Obviously, as I said in the intro, unveiling of the black uniforms. That was a big to-do because of the fact that, of what the association was of those uniforms going back to the Matt Millen era. That was a big whole sort of, contrast between certain fans as far as what they wanted them to mean now versus what they meant back in the day. So that was something. Plus the fact that the Lions finally got the victory over the Seattle Seahawks for the first time since 2012. That was important. That was a historical meaning and, just something that meant a lot to not only the Lions organization, but to the fans. And then the fact, obviously, Jared Goff having a perfect passing game as far as not having any incompletions, all the stuff that went into that game. I talked about that in a previous episode. That was history on top of history. But the significance of that game is not just for Lions fans. And it's not just the history as far as, records being set, breaking trends. The significance of that game, in my opinion, is that the Detroit Lions, I believe, exposed the Seattle Seahawks as frauds for what happened the first, 3 games of the year. First, let me just say this. Going into that game on Monday night, I quite literally, go back and watch my content if you so choose to, but I literally called from a very generic, broad sense what the game was exactly going to do for both teams, how they were going to go about it. Now, I'm not saying I knew the exact plays and the very specifics of everything like that. I didn't say that. But as far as the basic stuff, I did say that. I called that out almost to like 90-95% accuracy. I said the Seahawks were going to short pass damn near all night. They did. I said there was going to be an extreme imbalance for their offense. It was. I said that they were not going to be able to stop Goff in the passing game. They couldn't. And I said that Geno Smith was going to be under constant pressure and constant duress. He was. I then said for the Lions, we had to maintain offensive balance. We had to make sure that we had the running game going and then allow the passing game to get it set up. We did. I said that the offense was going to build upon its success, build upon what it did in that first half against the Cardinals. They not only did that, but they just absolutely, took that and made it even much more massive than that. And I said also, Lions were going to have to get up. They were going to have to control the game. They were going to have to do things their way. They did. And then the final thing I said is that the Lions were going to have to do their best to keep Geno Smith contained, and they were going to have to make sure that the coverage remained sticky. And for the large part of the game, that was exactly what happened. So what I'm trying to say here is that, what I called, I'm not trying to say I'm a savant. I'm not trying to say that, I have the ability to see into the future. But what I called happening based upon statistics, based upon trends, analysis, and film wound up coming to pass. Why is that important? The reason it is important is because when we take a look at how and what happened during that game, especially for the Seahawks, That is a very disturbing thing for the Seahawks. Now, I understand. Seahawks fans are instantaneously going to jump on the fact they're going to say, oh, you can't say that about this, that, or the other thing for your offense because we didn't have all of our players. You know what I say to that? Boo freaking who? And I'm not trying to say that to sound like, oh, you know what? I don't care. I do care. But let's understand something here. When you're talking about any other team in the National Football League, nobody's going to give one rat's butt about the fact that, oh, you had injuries that week. It's a next man up business. Anytime that our Lions had to deal with injuries and we wanted to say, oh, well, if we had this player, it would have been different. It's like, listen, the player wasn't there. The player couldn't play. You had to go with what you had. So it's like, listen, you make the best game plan based upon what you have. They're professionals. They're supposed to get it done. That's the end of it. As much as that might sound distasteful when we're having this conversation and the shoe's on the other foot, that's the way it be. So I understand Seahawks fans are not going to enjoy this conversation, but it's like, you know what? That's irrelevant. But when we take a look at the Seahawks, let's think about this. I said mostly throughout the entirety of this year, Geno Smith has been a check down artist because every single game that he has played, I would say easily 75 to 80% of his passes, if not higher, he's not getting the ball out past maybe 10 yards. And that's exactly what happened during this game. Geno Smith was a check down Nancy, but that wasn't because of his fault. Again, when you have an offensive line like what the Seahawks have, you cannot get enough time to protect the quarterback so he can survey the field. You go back to that game Monday night. Of the 56 attempts that Geno Smith had, literally only 15 of them were further than 10 yards. 15 out of 56. That right there ought to tell you something. And of those 15 attempts, he only completed 8 of them. And that was for 150 yards, an interception for a rating of 60.4. That is a bad night when you're talking about trying to set up the deeper passing game. And the reason why it's a bad night is because, okay, it might not have been Geno Smith's fault, because I'm not saying it was. But when you cannot further expand your passing game, it really limits your offense and it allows opposing defense to be like, oh, hey, they're not throwing the ball down the field because they can't. We can focus more on the intermediate and short routes and bottle up and keep their defense contained. And think about it, folks. When you have 56 attempts, it pretty much will tell me this. Goes back to the game against, the Bucks that Jared Goff had. Oh yeah, Jared Goff had over 300 plus passing yards in that game. But when you throw the ball 55 times, you kind of lose the significance of the 300 plus yards because it's like, 56 divided by, 300 something, you're now again getting back to like 6-7 yards an average a throw. Not exactly really going to give me much of a oh wow factor. And again, the truth was literally out there because if you take a look at Geno Smith's stats for intended air yards per throw, he was at 6.9 coming into the game. When he left the game, it had dropped another 0.2. It had gone from 6.9 to 6.7. He now is not tied 22nd, he's tied 24th in the league. So again, he's having to throw the ball ridiculously short the majority of the time. Now, understand what I'm trying to say here. I'm not trying to say Geno Smith is a bad quarterback. In fact, I'm saying the exact opposite. I give Geno Smith a hell of a ton of praise. The fact that he was able to do what he did with virtually almost no offensive line and no running game for the majority of said game, I give him kudos. I give him massive respect because most quarterbacks are not going to be able to make that work. And he was able to make it work. The fact that he was able to have a semblance of a good game for the most part, the fact that he was able to make that Seattle Seahawks offense consistently move the ball and actually keep it in the game, I give him mad props. But when you have an offensive line like the Seahawks, as I've been saying, that literally was an embarrassment for the most part on national television, it's hard to do much of anything. I mean, you go back to that night. Almost the entire night, Geno Smith was running for his life. He was running in the pocket, trying to extend plays. He was under constant pressure, constant duress. The freaking line could not give him any time to make much of a difference. Think about this, folks. Again, of the 56 attempts that Geno Smith had, 21 times he was pressured. I said before the game, Geno Smith was being pressured 38.1% of the time on his dropbacks, for 10th most in the NFL. Coming out of that game, Geno Smith's pressure percentage was at 39.4. So it jumped up over an extra percent following the game against the Detroit Lions. And now he's not the 10th highest pressured quarterback in the NFL. He's now the 7th highest pressured quarterback in the NFL. For a quarterback, that's not where you want to be. Quarterbacks do not do well under pressure. For anybody that tries to tell me that, I'm going to be like, listen, you take a look at what's going on with some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. They're not having really great starts to their year. And a lot of it has to do to the fact that they're getting pressured. Defenses are finding ways to get after them. Some of it's also because they might not have certain weapons. But the point of the matter is that quarterbacks do not do good when circumstances are not in their favor. That's just the truth of the matter. And we're seeing it when we're talking about quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow. We're seeing it with Geno Smith. We've seen it with Jared Goff. That is what happens. And when you take a look at Geno Smith, he's not only been pressured a freaking crap ton, he's also been sacked quite a bit so far to the start of the year. He's been sacked 11 times in 4 games. That's 11th most in the NFL. So he's not only getting pressured for freaking a whole bunch, he's also getting sacked a whole bunch. That right there tells me something. For everybody that wants to try and make the Seattle Seahawks out to be something that's really good, I consider that is a misdirectional statement. The fact that the Seattle Seahawks have done as well as they have in terms of win-loss is because, again, they've played against some really bad teams with bad circumstances, or, they're trying to build something before, whatever, and the Seahawks were able to say, hey, they're not up and running yet, we can take advantage of this. That's what they did, which is kudos to them, but it's like, I can't really take you very seriously yet when, oh, that's right, the first 3 games you played were against teams that are literally falling apart or haven't even built anything yet, and then as soon as you play the Lions, you give up a 40-burger on PRIMETIME, and the Lions, for the most part, pretty much handle you. That's what I'm trying to say, folks, because again, you take a look at the offensive line, which is where I've centered a lot of my analysis going into the game. Going into the game, according to PFF, the Seattle Seahawks offensive line for, pass blocking was ranked 29th at 53.2 grade and had a pass block win rate from ESPN of 38%, ranked for 30th. Coming out of the game, their pass block grade from PFF got worse, but their ranking got better. Now, actually, from ESPN, their pass block win rate went up substantially, but they only went up 1 ranking spot. That's what I'm trying to say, folks. When you go against good teams, after you've been playing against scrub talent and scrub teams, this is the result you get. That's why when Seattle Seahawks wanted to try and tell me, or Seattle Seahawks fans, pardon me, not the actual team itself, when the fans wanted to try and tell me that I was talking out my you-know-what, I'm like, dude, you guys can't try and sugarcoat this. I've said this statement before. You can't put sugar on a turd and somehow try and expect to make me think that, it's going to be something delicious. That's not going to happen. Coming into this game, the Seattle Seahawks had a lot of stuff to try and mask the whole, nonsense that was going on deeper behind the scenes because, oh, you have a 3-0 record, it looks like you're really all that good. And it's like, no, you guys have a lot of deep flaws. The record is just making it look a lot prettier than what it really is. And again, I'm not trying to just dog the Seahawks, but it's like, dude, the Seahawks were getting all this praise, and Seattle Seahawks fans were like, oh yeah, we're going to do something. And it's like, dude, you guys have gotten such an easy schedule. You haven't faced anybody yet. And as soon as you do, you get literally spanked like a 5-year-old. Now, granted, you guys hung in there. You guys made it a game. I give you full kudos for that. But the only reason you guys were able to stay in that game was because Geno Smith literally played his ass off. If you try to put anybody else in the same situation, you guys are not going to have the same result. Geno Smith was largely the reason why you guys were able to put up the points you were, at least from that perspective. The other reason you guys were able to get those points is because the refs literally kept extending your drives. 2 out of the 3 times you got into the red zone were because you guys got freaking penalties that extended your drives and you got points. So again, circumstances would make this a whole hell of a lot different if certain things were not actually factual. And again, that's just talking about the offense. Let's go back to the defense. Everybody wanted to talk about prior to the game that the Seattle Seahawks had this great defense because, oh, that's right, they were one of the best passing defenses, and, oh, they hadn't allowed a whole lot of passing yards, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, dude, who have you played as a quarterback? Your best quarterback playing prior to Jared Goff was Jacoby Brissett. He's a nobody. He's a journeyman. How can you say you have a great defense when you haven't played anybody? But yet, what happened? Went in Seattle Seahawks fans' ears, out the other, and didn't catch anything in the middle. So what happens? You get into that game on Monday night, and you get against a top 10 quarterback like Jared Goff. Oh, Jared Goff literally sets an NFL record that nobody has ever done, and chances are, likely will never be able to do. 18 straight passes in a row, folks, is hard as hell to do. And Jared Goff literally made it look almost effortless. He was making plays that a lot of people would have said he could never do. And he went out there and was like, hey, you know what? Just another day at the office, practically. And that was, again, against the Seattle Seahawks, top defense in terms of passing yards and, passing grade, efficiency, blah, 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 blah. And Jared Goff virtually made it look effortless. Because if you take a look at how the Lions' offense went that night, the Lions literally were almost as perfectly balanced as you could ask for. They had 19 passing plays to 28 rushing plays. And off that, they got more passing first downs than they did rushing first downs. 19 passing plays, they got 12 first downs. 28 rushing plays, they got 8 first downs off of that. That's pretty damn impressive. Then you take a look at the red zone conversion rate. The Lions were able to maintain the red zone conversion percentage that they had against the freaking Cardinals. Because the first 2 weeks, the Lions offense in the red zone had sputtered like freaking crazy. It was not getting anywhere. We were 3-11 in our first 2 games of the year. We were only converting 27.3% of the time in the red zone, folks. That's horrid. But since, the game against the Cardinals, we've been 100%. We've converted 7 out of 7 times. We are now at 55.6%. That's tied for 16th. That is a substantial difference from 27.3 to now 55.6. And again, that's against the supposed great Seattle Seahawks defense, which again had not played any serious offensive talent. And again, the one team that they had played that does have a good offensive ensemble, you played against Skylar Thompson and you played against Tim Boyle. And that same Miami Dolphins offense with a new quarterback on same Monday night against the Tennessee Titans, another team that's not that good, got embarrassed. When you lose to the Tennessee Titans 32 to something or whatever it was, and, that's right, Will Levis gets knocked out of the game, you have to go to Mason Rudolph, and they still put up 30 points, and your offense can't do much of virtually anything. What does that say about the Seattle Seahawks defense then? It doesn't really give a very ringing endorsement. And then again, that's just the Lions offense against the Seattle Seahawks defense. But then when you take a look at our defense and what it was able to do against the Seattle Seahawks offense, and again, I give a lot of props to the offense of the Seahawks because Geno Smith was able to keep that offense going and was able to extend plays and use the talent he had. But the Lions, going into that game, had garnered turnovers on every single game that we had. And in that game, we got another one. Actually, we got two. We got a fumble and an interception. The Lions currently now have 5 turnovers on their defense that they've garnered over the entirety of the year. 4 picks to 1 fumble. That's pretty damn good. It means we're an opportunistic defense, and we take what we get. But when we take a look at what the Lions were doing already prior to that, other than the turnovers, we were dominating in the pass rush. We continue to dominate in the pass rush because, like I said, bad offensive line. Freaking Hutch that night had literally a win percentage rate on pass rushes of 30.9%. Currently, right now, he's still the best edge rusher in the NFL with a 35.4 win percent rate. Levi had a good night, 10.8 percentage win rate in pass rush. McNeil, 11.6. DJ Reader had a great night, 13.6. And then when you take a look at how they've been doing so far over the course of the season, Levi has an 11.5 pass rush win rate. That's in the top 40. McNeil, 12.6, actually 25. And then DJ Reader is also in the top 40. And he's more of a run stuffer. He's at 10.9%. So wait a minute here. That also was something I predicted. I said we were going to pressure the hell out of Geno Smith. We did. Oh, I said we were going to have opportunities to get sacks on Geno Smith. Oh, because the last 2 times we played Geno Smith, we only got 1 sack. This game we got 3. Lions currently have 11 sacks on the year. That's tied for 13th best. So when you take a look at the whole picture, it definitely proves what I'm saying. Now, the one thing that the Seattle Seahawks were able to do that was not what I had intended, was not what I thought was going to happen, was their rush offense actually came to life. And again, that was largely in part due to the absolute Herculean effort of Canine. I didn't think he was going to be able to have the impact that he did coming off of an oblique injury, especially when he wasn't fully 100%. But the man was going on a mission to do whatever he could, and he did a great job. I give him full kudos for that. It obviously, took about a whole half or 3/4 for him to start doing it. But still, great job by Canine. But again, the one area that actually I know a lot of Lions fans were, kind of disappointed from on the night was the pass defense. But again, the way I look at it is when Seattle throws the ball 56 times, I kind of, again, lose a lot of the wow factor for what you're able to do. The Lions only gave up 1 passing touchdown. They got an interception. They held Geno Smith as far as, not being able to throw the ball down the field. If you actually take a look at how our defensive backs did that night, other than the penalties, which is everything what people are focusing on, our defensive backs actually did pretty damn good statistically. Freaking Carlton Davis held his wide receiver to an 81.3 passer rating for the quarterback. Terrion Arnold, a 56.3 passer rating. And obviously I'm going to put the other stats up while I'm saying this. Amik Robertson held his wide receiver and the quarterback throwing it to him to a 75 passer rating. And Kirby Joseph held, freaking Geno Smith and other wide receivers as a safety to a 79.2 passer rating. Our cornerbacks actually did a really good job against a really good receiving core with a quarterback that was doing everything he could to extend plays. Now, yes, I know, obviously, that's not talking about the analytics and the grades, and I know that's not talking about the entirety of the season. But again, I knew coming into this situation that our passing defense was going to take some time to get on the same page. But if you think about it, over the last 2 games between the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals, our passing defense has gotten substantially better. Yes, obviously there's still penalties, and that's going to get cleaned up. But the way I look at it is very simple. You have to build upon what you have. And since the Lions were starting from scratch with their new secondary, they had to build from the bottom up. Terrion Arnold has been getting better and better over the last 2 games. And that's significantly better from where he was in the first game. And as a whole unit, they're getting better. So yeah, overall, if you take a look at all the stats from the beginning of the year, the Lions don't look all that good in terms of analytics per player or the stats. But if you actually take a look at the difference from game to game, you're seeing a very positive trend in the upward direction. And what does freaking Dan Campbell say? He's like, listen, this is what we want to see. We want to see steady progression. We don't want to see this. We want to just see steady progression. That's what the Lions coverage team is doing. And again, overall, our passing coverage is actually pretty good in the NFL. It's at a 68.6 according to PFF in terms of grade. That's 12th best in the NFL. And that's with an entirely new defensive backfield working together. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm fine with that. It could be better, yes, but it's pretty damn good considering the circumstances. All I'm simply trying to say is this. The Seattle Seahawks came into that game with a whole hell of a lot of fanfare, and while they put up a valiant effort, while Geno Smith played his heart out and K9 ran his ass off, they fell flat. They got exposed against a top team on primetime. And until they fix the things that I said are literally their shortcomings, the areas where they have the biggest issues, they're not going to get anywhere. The Lions literally went out on Monday night and showed the rest of the NFL, oh, this is how you beat the Seattle Seahawks. This is what you need to do. And it's now out there. It's on film. It's a recipe that everybody else can use. Just saying. Them be the facts. But anyway, I'm going to end this episode. I've rambled on long enough, so I just want to say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also want to encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past, you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and you not had a chance to do so, want to highly encourage y'all again to subscribe, but please also make sure you hit that bell notification icon so you never miss any more content I push out. Also want to encourage y'all to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel grows, the greater the channel spreads, and the newer viewership we're able to bring in. And with that being said, whether you've been here for a long time as far as a viewer or this is your first time viewing me, I hope you all enjoyed the content. I hope you all got something out of it that was meaningful to you and you learned something, but more importantly, I hope you all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.